Ukrainian expertise in the field of air defense is unique, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated. This weekend, the head of state visited the countries of the Persian Gulf. Ukraine and Qatar have agreed on a 10-year partnership in the defense sector. According to Zelensky, as a result of the negotiations, the countries signed the corresponding agreement. It envisions the implementation of joint projects in the defense industry and the creation of co-production facilities, as well as the development of technological partnerships between companies. And now our news digest on the main events of the weekend. Afterwards, my colleague Yuri Kulinich and I will continue discussing current topics with our studio guests. Over the weekend, Russia carried out the largest number of strikes on Odessa. Dozens of Shaheds flew over residential neighborhoods. One of the city's maternity hospitals came under attack. A drone struck the roof of a 4-story building. The blast wave blew out windows and doors. At the time of the attack, patients and medical staff were in a shelter. No one was injured. In addition, educational and preschool institutions were damaged. In addition, Russian occupiers struck the port infrastructure. A grain gallery was damaged there.
We just couldn't put out the fire at all. It's absolutely terrible. How it managed to hit this exact spot, I have absolutely no idea at all. When it hit, I was opening the doors. It was just panic. Look, it hit here at the neighbor's place. It hit here at the neighbor's place. It tore everything out. There was a fire. We didn't manage to put it out in time, and other houses caught fire. You can see the consequences. We took something to calm our nerves and are dealing with the aftermath. The windows were blown out, the glass shattered, the ceilings collapsed.
The head of Estonia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Russia's strike on a family home in Odessa an act of pure inhumanity. Margus Tsakna called for increased pressure on Russia.
Russia continues its deliberate attacks on civilians and vital infrastructure. In the face of such cruelty, there can be no justification, no neutrality, and no hesitation. Pressure on the aggressor must be increased. Margus Tsakna, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, on the social network X.
For 2 days, Russian forces attacked Kryvyi in the Dnipropetrovsk region with Shahed drones. According to local authorities, an industrial infrastructure facility was damaged as a result of the shelling. 1 person was killed and 2 others were injured. Strikes on gas production facilities in the Poltava region also continue. According to Naftogaz, a 55-year-old company employee was killed as a result of the attack. He was an operator of a technological installation.
Russia is deliberately targeting not only residential neighborhoods. It is striking at facilities that support the region's vital functions: industry, energy, railways. At the same time, there are strikes on oil and gas production in the Poltava region. In both cases, civilians have been killed. Mykola Lukashuk, head of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Council, on Telegram. In
the Sumy region, a 20-year-old woman became a victim of Russian shelling and her 6-year-old sister was wounded. There are also 2 people injured as a result of Russia's attack in another community of the region. According to the local military administration, private residential houses, outbuildings, as well as energy, gas, and industrial infrastructure facilities have been damaged. On Sunday, the Russian army shelled Kramatorsk. At least 3 people were killed and 7 were wounded. Among the victims was a 13-year-old boy. According to the regional military administration, the Russians dropped an aerial bomb on the city at midday. Residential apartment buildings were damaged.
Once again, the Russians are deliberately targeting a peaceful city and killing children. This is a deliberate act of terror against our people. They will definitely be held accountable for every life destroyed and every home demolished. Vadim Filashkin, head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration, on Telegram.
The Russians continue to shell Kherson. On Sunday, the enemy army struck a civilian car with a drone in the Korabelny district of the city. A woman was killed at the scene. Local residents say the explosion was so powerful that the shockwave blew out windows and doors. Part of the building was destroyed. One of the main threats to Kherson remains Russian drones. The drones. They are increasingly attacking residential buildings, cars, cyclists, and even...
I was surrounded by a crowd of panicked pedestrians running in every direction. For what felt like about an entire hour, I absolutely couldn't hear a single thing in my left ear due to the blast. There was a raging fire burning all around me, and I could see sharp, jagged pieces of shattered glass lying right in front of my very eyes, reflecting the intense heat and the orange glow of the flames. I heard the exit, then the explosions, and as I came in here, the window was blown out. We were sitting right under the canopy at that moment. In
the hospital, a 13-year-old girl who was severely wounded as a result of Russia's attack on the Mykolaiv region has died. On Saturday evening, the occupiers struck the Voskresensky community with Shahed drones. According to the regional military administration, doctors are fighting to save the lives of 2 more victims. In total, after the Russian drone strike on the recreation area, 9 people were injured, 7 of whom are children. In addition, an educational institution, 3 private houses and 3 shops were damaged and power lines were severed. At least 2 people were injured as a result of Russian shelling in Kharkiv. According to preliminary data, the Russian army used the Geran 2 type UAV. The occupiers deliberately targeted the private sector. 4 houses were damaged. Over the past weekend alone, at least 13 people were killed as a result of Russian attacks. 36 people were injured. On Saturday evening, the Russian army used a Kinzhal aeroballistic missile. Ukrainian cities were attacked by 695 drones of various types. Nearly 1,500 guided aerial bombs, more than 3,000 strike drones, and 40 missiles of various types. This week, the Russian army used them against Ukraine. This was reported by President Volodymyr Zelensky. He emphasized that the Kremlin does not want to end the war, and at the same time it is also contributing to prolonging the conflict in the Middle East. Zelensky noted that now is the right time to develop the production of modern weapons together with partners.
The destabilization of global markets and the blocking of sea routes have not left a single country unaffected. We are making our contribution to ensuring security, and it is important that the world does not waste time or opportunities. Clear, decisive, and coordinated efforts are needed to provide real protection for lives and to stop wars. It is necessary to build joint and modern defense systems that have been tested in war, to develop joint production of modern and effective weapons, to combine capabilities so that people can live in peace in Europe, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Ukraine and Qatar have agreed on a 10-year partnership in the defense sector. This was announced by Volodymyr Zelensky, who arrived in Doha as part of his Middle East tour. The head of the Ukrainian state met with the emir and the prime minister of the country. The parties signed an agreement that provides for the development of joint projects, technological partnership, and investments. Earlier, Ukraine signed a similar agreement with Saudi Arabia, and in the near future, a 10-year defense agreement will also be signed with the United Arab Emirates, Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized. The day before, the Ukrainian leader also met with the president of this country. The leaders discussed Iran's strikes, the security situation in the region, and the impact of the conflict on the global oil market. Ukraine also offered its partners its experience in defending against drones and missiles.
We need resources for investments in Ukraine so that we can produce the weapons and equipment we lack. We are constantly seeking additional funding. First of all, we are interested not only in receiving aid, but also in establishing mutually beneficial partnerships. There are several areas of focus. The first is armaments, production, exchange of experience, and sharing of scarce resources that one country lacks, but another possesses. The second is long-term cooperation in the energy sector.
President Volodymyr Zelensky also met with Ukrainian military experts who have been working in Saudi Arabia for over a week and discussed with them the results of their work and further strengthening of air defense. Zelensky stated that the Ukrainian experts managed in a short period of time to share their experience and demonstrate how people and infrastructure are protected in Ukraine. The president emphasized that Ukrainian expertise in the field of air defense is unique. It has been developed under real combat conditions and has already proven its effectiveness. In turn, the United States promises that weapons intended for Ukraine will not be redirected to the Middle East for now. As stated by Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio assured him of this during their meeting on the sidelines of J7. After the Ukrainian drone strike on the plant in the Leningrad region, only 40% of the facility's capacity remains. This was announced by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure have had a significant impact on its economy. This is not enough to cut off Russia's ability to finance the war. That is why Volodymyr Zelensky called on his European partners to strengthen sanctions against the Russian Federation, in particular, against the Shadow Fleet. And for more details on this, see our report. The situation in the Middle East plays into the Kremlin's hands and actually offsets part of the sanctions pressure. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, the joint sanctions policy of various countries directly affected the reduction of the Russian Federation's capabilities. The Russians circumvented the sanctions, but one way or another their revenues decreased. Accordingly, less money was allocated to the defense sector.
According to our forecasts, by 2026, the deficit was expected to be about 100 billion US dollars. Now, after the easing of sanctions on the energy sector of the Russian Federation, specifically on petroleum products, their revenues are measured in billions. This certainly does not contribute to reducing the intensity of hostilities in Ukraine nor in Iran, because Russia, in one way or another, will help the Iranian regime. Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, in an interview with Le Monde.
As the president notes, in just 2 weeks of the military operation in the Middle East, Russia earned about $2 billion from energy exports. And Bloomberg writes that the Kremlin is already considering the possibility of directing additional revenues to the military budget.
This shift represents a sharp turnaround in sentiment compared to just a month ago, when the government was considering lowering its economic growth forecast to around 1%. This came as tighter sanctions over the invasion of Ukraine, and falling oil prices led to a significant drop in revenues. From the Bloomberg article,
Europe is convinced that sanction pressure on the aggressor country must be increased, which is why the European Union is already discussing new restrictions against Russia's shadow fleet.
This concerns not only the tankers themselves, but also the ports that facilitate the export of Russian oil. Pressure on Russia's energy sector is the main task of the Group of 7 countries, stated German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul.
We must not allow our collective support for Ukraine to weaken. That would be a strategic mistake from the perspective of Euro-Atlantic security. After all, it is clear that if Putin wins this war, our security will sharply deteriorate, not only for Germany but for Europe and both sides of the Atlantic. That is precisely why pressure on Russia must remain high. This includes the application of strategic and targeted pressure on the Russian energy sector through comprehensive international sanctions and the implementation of rigorous and consistent measures against Russia's shadow fleet. This is a task for all partners in the Group of 7.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on partners to block Russia's ability to use its shadow fleet. He also thanked Denmark, Sweden, and France for detaining these tankers.
Please continue to put pressure on Russia. Its tankers and shadow fleet should not feel safe in European waters. I thank Denmark, Sweden, and France for detaining these vessels. This is a clear demonstration that enforcing compliance with the rules is not only possible but also effective. Now we need to go further. These tankers should not just be stopped. Their use to circumvent international law must be prevented. We need joint action to create strong legislation in Europe. This will allow countries to block Russian tankers and confiscate oil. This should become a real tool that will deprive Russia of the ability to put pressure on Europe.
Canada has also declared its support for Ukraine. The government has added another 100 tankers from Russia's shadow fleet to the sanctions list. The corresponding statement was made by the country's foreign minister Anita Anand ahead of the Group of 7 foreign ministers meeting in France. As long as Russia does not stop its aggression, Canada will continue to increase pressure through sanctions in coordination with its allies and partners. Anita Anand, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada. Pressure on the Russian economy is yielding results thanks to the joint actions of Ukraine and its allies. At least 40% of Russia's oil export capacity has been put out of commission, according to Reuters calculations. The situation was affected by Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian oil export infrastructure as well as the detention of shadow fleet tankers. And the Ukrainian drone strike on the Russian commercial port of Ust-Luga triggered a potential gasoline production crisis in Russia. As a result, starting April 1st, the government is introducing a complete ban on the export of automotive gasoline for all market participants.